Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans. On today's program, I have a special guest back with me again. Pastor Billy Crone is the senior pastor of Sunrise Bible Church in Las Vegas, Nevada. In addition to being a pastor, he's also a gifted author, conference speaker, and teacher. He's written many books on the end times and produced many documentaries. And today we're going to be talking about his book, Klaus Schwab, The Third Reich. Billy, it's an honor to have you here.
Hey, thank you, Jimmy. Great to be on.
Well, you always kind of blow our minds. And so, at the Prophecy Conference, you had everybody, just kind of wowing. But you get into this information, which I personally find is just intriguing.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Klaus Schwab because, a lot of people have heard about him, the World Economic Forum, that these are bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, from any perspective you want to look at it, that these are bad people, but they're end times people.
Right.
So let's just start with him. Who is he? What are his family connections?
Klaus Schwab, of course, is he's the founder and the CEO of the World Economic Forum.
Right.
People have probably heard about that as well, the World Economic Forum. A lot of the global elites and politicians and world leaders join him every year for his meetings in Davos, Switzerland. And but people don't realize what he's up to, and they certainly don't understand his background. If people are, he's pretty much in the media, but they don't know the background. They'll notice that when they see him, they're going like, this guy almost looks like, Dr. Evil or something. All he's missing is a cat.
He really does.
But if you trace the trail of this guy, he really is up to evil, and frankly, he could be called Dr. Evil. And I'm not joking on that, because if you trace the trail, he speaks with a German accent for a reason. I say the only thing that he's missing is not a cat. The only thing he's missing is a swastika and SS on there.
Wow.
And that might sound harsh, but that's why we say Klaus Schwab and the Third Reich. If you trace the trail, and by the way, you're going like, well, how come we haven't heard this connection with Klaus Schwab and dare I say with Hitler? It's because the internet has done a very good job of scrubbing it. And so you got to really dig deep to find it, and we did. But if you trace the trail, Klaus Schwab was born in Ravensbrück, Germany, and his dad owned a factory there in Ravensbrück and in Germany, and then not only that, that factory helped to make munitions for Hitler. In fact, it was such a quote by the Nazis deemed a great factory that it won awards from the Nazis, like as a model factory. In fact, as a quote model factory for the Nazis. And this is Klaus Schwab's dad, Eugene, and they not only made armaments, but they used slave labor,
wow,
including POWs. In which you look at it, and that adds a little bit of a historical context, I believe, to Klaus Schwab, now infamous phrase that people kind of laugh at, but he's deadly serious about this, that his goal is to bring to the planet, you'll own nothing and be happy. Like slave labor.
Oh, yeah.
And so we trace the trail that it's definitely connected with Hitler. And then what we do is I go, wait a second, okay, so he's got this German accent. I had my suspicions did he really have ties with Hitler, because he's acting like that, like a megalomaniac like Hitler was, and things of that nature. And then I'm going like, well, wait a second, let's reintroduce ourselves into the Third Reich. Let's find out what Hitler was really up to, if he could have pulled it off. He didn't get to pull off his global domination, but what was it like? And Jimmy, it blew me away. I couldn't believe it. Hitler, basically, he came at a time of crisis, an economic crisis. He rose out of that crisis. Hitler, believe it or not, then proceeded to, out of that crisis, take control of the government, the schools, the media, the entertainment at that time, which was movies and radio. Okay, he took over the medical industry. He took over the science industry, again, the education, all of it. He took over the transportation industry. And then he began to promise everybody utopia, a 1,000-year Reich, if you'd let him do this new regime, this new Third Reich. And then he even promised people that he was, believe it or not, this is in print, that he was going to get rid of pollution. He was going to save the animals. He was going to save the tree. They had this Reich Forestry Service, which the animals and the trees, the Germans taking control of, became the excuse to take away private property and things of that nature. He even promised transportation. Reminds me today with the electric car. We're pushing that you got to get an electric car and save the planet. He even pitched that not only with the Autobahn that's still there today to redo the transportation system, but everybody was going to have a car, which back then was a big deal. He called it the people's car. You know what that is translated in German? Volkswagen.
Right.
That's where he had Volkswagen. That was the people's car. He promised the world the utopia and all that stuff. He was also influenced by evolution and obviously with the eugenics program. Eugenics means you in the Greek, good genes.
Right.
And so then on top of this utopia, it was also a utopia to create a super race, an Aryan race, a pure blood race. And that's why he started with the Jews. It wasn't just because he was anti-Semitic, he was. But if people do the research, he believed that the Jewish people were close to pure ape. And they were at the bottom of his evolutionary list.
Wow.
Now, if he would have made it and continued, then he wasn't going to stop at the Jewish people. Most people don't get this. He was going to then go to the black African races, then the Oriental races, and then the Slavics, and on and up until he was left with this pure race, and they would all be a part of this utopia that he was building. That was the Third Reich. It's imprint. That's what it is. Now, if your listeners and viewers are paying attention, all that I just described, if you do the research, is exactly what Klaus Schwab is bringing to the planet. All he did was take the Third Reich and changed it and called it the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or the Great Reset. And what I'm saying, based on the research, you need to call it for what it is. It's the Fourth Reich. This is what this guy is up to, and this is the missing piece that people need to get.
Well, these are powerful people that go to Davos, Switzerland every year. The elite, President Biden has gone there every year. He's been one of their keynote speakers.
Yeah.
So talk about the World Economic Forum. What is the World Economic Forum?
The World Economic Forum started in 1971 by Klaus Schwab and his wife Hilda at the time, which, by the way, it's a family adventure taking over the planet because his two kids, Klaus Schwab's Nicole and Olivier, they also work, including his wife Hilda, they all work with bringing the planet, and they all have a goal. They want to institute this by 2030. I just got back from Europe. I was in Ireland, Scotland, Italy, speaking over there, and over there in the airports, over there, it's 2030. It's the big date. It's being advertised everywhere.
Wow.
This is the time when the planet's going to be reset. It's going to be wonderful. So the propaganda's out there. This is their goal. But they're out there working, and it isn't just themselves. Since 1971, the World Economic Forum is basically not just a think tank, but it has been a means of which to poll in and groom and create the new world leaders who will go along with this agenda to basically take over the planet and usher in really what's called should be called the Fourth Reich. And they have what's called, since then, so you basically got 50 years of educating, grooming new leaders. But if you look at it, and they're not hiding it, you can go to the World Economic Forum's website. Also, they have a YouTube channel. But if you look there, they have the Young Global Leaders. And they even have a searchable database. When it goes there, it pops up. The first thing is you can see this year's candidates, hundreds of them, or just see who also has been on there. And if you just start typing in some names, it will blow you away.
Wow.
You mentioned Biden. Biden told us that he was working for Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum. He's been groomed by them. The reason why we know is because what was the campaign slogan that Biden ran on? Build back better.
Yeah.
He even mentioned dark winter. You know where those come from? Straight out of Klaus Schwab.
Wow.
So and then if you look at the interviews with the world leaders, including people like Trudeau in Canada, Macron in France, all over the world, even the latest guy that is the current Prime Minister of England, Sunak, I believe, guess where he's from? The World Economic Forum.
Wow.
It's all tied together. So Klaus Schwab has taken the World Economic Forum for the last 50 years. He's groomed leaders to go along with his vision, megamaniac, taking over the planet, the Fourth Reich, and now he's got him in positions of power. Okay, and then what he admitted on tape was he took 50 years. He groomed all these guys. They're not hiding it. They're in every major developed country, including our own. And it isn't just Biden, by the way. And it's both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. And people need to wake up.
That's right.
We're being lied to. Okay, but they sold their souls to, dare I say, the devil, Klaus Schwab, in this Fourth Reich. And basically they got them all in place. And Klaus Schwab admitted, we got everybody in place who's going to do our bidding. We need a trigger. And he said that the COVID-19 crisis was the trigger. Right. He admitted it. And that's why he keeps saying very bluntly, you will not go back to new normal. This is our excuse to put this into play. Okay, and it's by 2030, we're going to reset the planet and basically translate it for what it is. They're going to take over the planet.
Well, so you talked about this at the conference a little bit. What they have done through the COVID-19 pandemic, which you call a plandemic.
Yeah.
And so what they have done is basically reorder the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a different world than existed before.
Right.
And so now, one of the things that, for example, people look at, and what was a big issue in the last election, was the border. is in the open border. The Biden says the border is great and we have people pouring in. They do not believe in sovereignty, in national sovereignty.
Right.
They want, they're globalist. And what they want to do is, this is, I think a part of the format or the agenda of the World Economic Forum. They want to bring America down. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, they're not hiding it. I said, like the one guy said, evil loves to brag.
Yeah.
And these guys aren't hiding it. Again, I encourage people, go not only to the World Economic Forum, go not only to the Young Global Leaders website and find all the people you want. You're going to be blown away at who's involved and who's been groomed by Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. But they also have a YouTube channel. They got their own YouTube channel. And this event that they call the Great Reset, which is basically taking over the planet, the Fourth Reich, it has its own YouTube channel. And if you go to the Great Reset YouTube channel, it clearly tells you their big planks. Not only, again, the infamous phrase by Klaus Schwab, treating us like prisoners of war, POWs, slave labor, you'll own nothing to be happy, which really what it is they're going to own everything, and no, you're not going to be happy, but that's how they pitch it. But they specifically say, and I'm going like, how is this not a national security issue? And they advertise it for the whole world to see. I'm not making this up. It's not a conspiracy theory, but they literally say this, and America will no longer be a world superpower. That's one of their planks, along with you'll own nothing and be happy and eat less meat and all this other stuff. It's like, wait a second, how come the government's not going like, we got people trying to take down our country? Because the people in our government are a part of it.
That's
the
right.
current administration. And I try to provide this point of clarity. It isn't just Biden's making dumb decisions. He is. He's not just making dumb decisions. He's making deliberate decisions to destroy the economy of America specifically, because that's the plank, one of the planks, the 8 planks of the Great Reset. America has to come down. America specifically, even economically, has to come down because we're the dollar reserve. We're the backbone of the world economy.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to crash the world economy to reset it into a cashless society and a biometric system, which is what they want to do with the Great Reset, you have to take America down, and they're not hiding from it. And so I tell people, listen, Biden is doing this on purpose. We knew that with the slogan, Build Back Better.
Yeah.
Build Back Better means crush and destroy and rebuild into the Great Reset, the Fourth Reich. But he also told us that from the very first day. What was the first thing he did when Biden got in? He shut off the pipelines.
That's right.
Now, that's a dumb economic thing to do.
Sure did.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the environment. Knowing that, and then from that day forward, he began to do things that actually harm our economy, and he hasn't stopped. That's why the inflation's gone through the roof. That's why the interest rates have gone up. They're doing it on purpose to destroy. The reason why is because Klaus Schwab, he's got the guys around the world through the World Economic Forum the last 50 years in place. He's basically taken Hitler's Third Reich, reformulated it, repackaged it. It really needs to be called the Fourth Reich. He calls it the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset. COVID was the global panic that created the trigger, and that's the point. You need, in order to change the global scene, you need a global crisis. It's the old axiom, right? You create a global crisis, then you can manage the global outcome. Well, and if you trace the trail, which we did, that also came from communism. That's how communism keeps taking over areas. So you create a crisis, you manage the outcome. And so COVID was the trigger to institute this. This is why the last 2 years, and they used COVID, by the way, as an excuse to bring in the mail-in ballots, because there was no way Trump was ever going to lose. No way was he going to lose. So they had to really, they cheated with Hillary too, but I don't think they realized how much Trump was going to squeak by and make it in. But they had to really pick up the cheat. So COVID not only became the trigger to create a crisis, to begin to hurt the world's economies in America and for other reasons, but it brought in the excuse for the mail-in ballot. They had to get Trump out, who was a nationalist, who was making decisions that was making our economy absolutely free, independent. We were, for the first time, we were energy independent. You can't have that if you want to crash the world's economy. So there was a multitude of reasons for the COVID thing. One of them was to bring in the mail-in ballot because you had to get Trump out. They got their man in. We know he's the man because the Build Back Better, and every decision he's made from day one is to do the bidding of Klaus Schwab, is to purposely destroy the economy of the United States. America has to come down if they're going to reset it in their image.
Well, thanks for watching this interview. I'm Mark Hitchcock, filling in for Pastor Jimmy while he's in Israel this week. And to see this full interview and much more End Times content, visit endtimes.com and sign up to become a member today. If you are a member, visit endtimes.com to see the full interview with Billy Crone. To hear more from Billy Crone, visit his website, getalifemedia.com. Well, this is Mark Hitchcock. I want to welcome you to the Tipping Point program. This is a program that's hosted every week by Jimmy Evans, and I appreciate the opportunity to fill in for him today on this great program that's here on endtimes.com. What I'm going to be talking about today in this program, I want to talk about something that people think a lot more about this time of year, kind of with Halloween approaching, and that is what the Bible says about hell. It's not a topic people like to think about very much, but it's a very important doctrine for us to understand as believers. In a bit after that, after this teaching, I'll go to our subscriber section where I want to talk about some current events, some things that are happening in Ukraine with U.S. troops actually right on the border of Ukraine positioned there right now. And also some interesting events happening with some of Russia's allies, Iran and Turkey, and how these really events kind of are triangulating together to really point towards the battle of Gog and Magog. Then I want to answer some questions as well. A couple of really good questions about the rapture, and one question about, why are there so many different views, and why do people interpret the book of Revelation so differently? So when we go to that subscriber section, that'll be the current events, and that'll be the Q&A. And if you're not a subscriber and you'd like to be, you can go to endtimes.com. You can sign up there. It's only $7 a month. And I can assure you it'll be some of the best money that you spend in a long time, as you'll really be brought into all these Q&A sessions and current event sessions that we do. So feel free to go and become a member of endtimes.com. We'd love to have you as part of the endtimes.com family. Well, as I mentioned, this week's Halloween, this next week is, and, this time of year we hear people talking about things that we rarely hear them talk about at other times of the year. Our culture is becoming more and more secular and more distanced from really any kind of spiritual conversations, or especially the Bible. But this time of year with Halloween, we'll hear people talk a little bit more about the devil. We'll hear people maybe talk about demons. We'll hear more talk about hell. For most people, though, today, hell is either kind of a big joke. Maybe it's a myth. Maybe they think it's just part of some kind of, medieval legends, or it's just completely misunderstood. It is interesting. A recent Pew Research poll found that 73% of Americans believe in heaven, but only 72% believe in hell. Now, I remember years ago, 90% of people in America believed in heaven. It's down to less than 3 out of 4, and the number of believe in hell is down to less than 2 out of 3. There's a headline I read in a newspaper a few years ago that probably caused a few people to choke on their coffee. It read this: it may be harder to get to hell this year. And then here's what the article said. It may be harder to get to hell this year. A bridge on the main road leading to Hell, Michigan is badly in need of repair. A project that could close the road for 3 months. Business owners in the town fear that the disruption in traffic would force some stores into bankruptcy. It'll close the whole town, complained Jim Lee, president of the Hell Chamber of Commerce. Officials acknowledge that the repair work will cause some disruption, but insist that the plans to fix the road to hell are paved with good intentions. The road has suffered great damage each time hell freezes over. Well, that's, of course, a funny article from a newspaper, but sadly, it's all too easy to get to the place that the Bible calls hell. But most people totally ignore the warnings, and they choose to simply kind of wish it all away. Unbelievers often reject the idea of hell altogether. And of course, a lot of believers ignore it. They don't want to talk about what the Bible says about hell and the afterlife. Now, when we talk about hell in the scripture, it's often, we could call it the netherworld or the underworld. And when we talk about that, we usually just employ this kind of general term, the word hell. Now, Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary defines hell like this: it's another world in which the dead continue to exist, the nether realm of the devil and the demons, in which the damned suffer everlasting punishment. So the word hell is kind of a catch-all word that we use for the abode of the devil and demons and the souls of damned human beings. But the Bible is a lot more specific and precise in its description of the netherworld than most people realize. According to the Bible, the underworld or the netherworld is divided into 4 different parts or regions or realms. And the first hints of this are found all the way back in the Old Testament. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 22, it says this, "For a fire kindled in my anger and burns to the lowest parts of Sheol, and consumes the earth with its yield and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains." So you notice there it refers to Sheol, which is a common Old Testament word, a Hebrew word for the grave and kind of the afterlife for many. But it calls here the lowest parts of Sheol, kind of like there's another part to Sheol. So the Old Testament word for Sheol is just kind of the general word for the place of the departed dead. In some places, it means nothing more than just the grave. But in other places, it clearly refers to the realm of departed spirits. But in the progress and the unfolding of Revelation, as God gives us more and more truth as we go through the Bible, the New Testament's a lot more specific. And so in the New Testament, there are 4 different Greek words that are translated often hell in the New Testament. And this reveals to us that there are 4 distinct parts of the underworld. And again, we know this because there's 4 different Greek words used to describe it. Now, some people will say, well, these words are just synonyms, they all just kind of mean the same thing. But as I'm going to go through and show you, these refer to 4 different parts of the underworld. Now, let me say this as I get into this a bit. The New Testament, the Bible doesn't teach purgatory. So there's not like a 5th place where purgatory is some kind of a halfway house or a stopping off spot between this world and the afterlife. There's no purgatory taught in Scripture. So I want to look together at each of these 4 words and discover their significance. The first word is the abyss. The abyss, or it's the Greek word abyssos. Sometimes it's translated the bottomless pit. So one part of the underworld is called the bottomless pit or the abyss, or sometimes it's called, you could translate it, the shaft of the abyss. The word abyssos occurs in the New Testament 9 times. 7 times it's found in the book of Revelation. Let me just read a couple verses in Revelation 9 about the abyss. It says, "The 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven, which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit," that's the abyss, "was given to him. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit." And then down in verse 11 of Revelation 9, they have, that is, these beings that come up out of the abyss, they're these locust-like creatures that are demonic spirits. They have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek, his name is Apollyon, which basically means just like Terminator. Now, evidently from its description in the Bible, the abyss is a place where a specific group of demons are being temporarily confined. And according to Revelation chapter 9, they're going to be let out and released during the tribulation period to torment people on the earth for a period of 5 months. Twice in Revelation 9, it says that they torment people for 5 months. The abyss is also the place where Satan will be confined during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Revelation chapter 20 says that an angel is going to come and grab Satan and put him in the abyss where he'll be confined for 1,000 years. So the abyss is a place where some fallen angels today who go too far can be confined until they're going to be released in the end times. You remember when Jesus confronted the man with a legion of demons? Remember, Jesus is going to cast the demons out of the man, and the demons ask Jesus, they say, "Don't cast us into the abyss before the time." And so Jesus grants that request and casts these demonic spirits into a herd of swine. And the swine, of course, go over the cliff and are destroyed there. But what becomes clear is that these demonic spirits, they don't want Jesus to send them to the abyss because that's where some demons go that go too far and unrestrained behavior. So one of the things that tells us is even demons today have some restraint on their behavior. If they go too far, they'll be sent to the abyss. So the shaft of the abyss in Scripture is a temporary place of confinement for some demons who go too far in their rebellion against God. And the fear of being cast into the abyss acts as a kind of deterrent on the scope and the extent of their wickedness. Now, the second part of the underworld mentioned in the New Testament is Tartarus. The word Tartarus only occurs one time in the New Testament. It's in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. And the verse says this, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment." Now, in our English translation, the words "cast them into hell" translate one Greek word. It's the word tartarosis. And you could translate it really tartarized. So these angels who sinned are sent to Tartarus or tartarized. Now, in Greek mythology, Tartarus was the lowest level of the underworld. It was the bottom chamber or the basement or the lowest place of the underworld for the most heinous offenders. And if you read 2 Peter chapter 2, if you look at the flow of that passage, it's talking about judgment. And it talks about these angels who are committed to pits of darkness. Then it talks about the flood. And then it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah. So the only place really before the flood that we can see these angels who sinned is in Genesis chapter 6. This passage where the sons of God, they're these angels, come into the daughters of men, to women, and they cohabit with them and have this monstrous race of people on the earth before the time of the flood. And so that's what's being spoken of here. These angels that are sent to Tartarus are fallen angels, again, who went too far. And who came and cohabited with women and created this monstrous race of people trying to corrupt the human race so that the Redeemer couldn't come from the seed of the woman. You have a parallel passage in Jude verse 7 and 8. It says, "The angels who did not keep their own domain but abandoned their proper abode, God has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day." So the abyss is a place where some fallen angels are being held temporarily. They're going to be let go for 5 months during the tribulation period to torment. But these angels who sinned in Genesis 6, they've been sent to Tartarus permanently. And they'll be there permanently until the day of judgment, till they're brought before, after the great white throne judgment, when they're going to be judged and then ultimately sent into the lake of fire. So 2 different groups of parts of the underworld are for 2 groups of fallen angels. Now, the third word that's used in the New Testament for the underworld is the word Hades. That's found 10 times in the New Testament. In a couple places, Hades means nothing more than just the grave. We see that a couple times in Acts 2. So in those cases, it's kind of just similar to the Old Testament word Sheol. But the majority of uses of Hades in the New Testament reveal that it's a place where the souls of lost people are presently being confined as they await the final day of judgment. One passage I'll just read and mentions Luke 16, the parable Jesus gave of the rich man and Lazarus. And it says in Luke chapter 16, says, "Now it came about the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man died also and was buried. And in Hades, he was in torment." Now, often that's just translated hell, but it's the word Hades there. In other words, the soul or the spirit of this lost man is confined there in Hades. So I don't want to use too, kind of a familiar of an example, but you could kind of look at it this way. Hades is kind of like the county jail, where inmates await their trial date and their final sentence, and they're transferred to the penitentiary, the prison, where they're going to serve out their time. And so if Hades is kind of like the county jail where the spirits of lost people are being held now, the final word is the word Gehenna. It's the most commonly used term for the underworld or the netherworld in the New Testament. It's found 12 times in the New Testament. Interestingly, 11 of the 12 times it's on the lips of Jesus, or where Jesus describes this place. Now, when we think of hell as it's commonly used as the place kind of a final confinement for fallen angels and unbelieving humans, Gehenna is normally the place that people have in mind. So again, if Hades is the county jail, then Gehenna is kind of the maximum security penitentiary. So Gehenna is the final place of torment for Satan, demons, and all lost people for all the ages. The word Gehenna comes from the Valley of Hinnom. It's a deep valley or ravine south and west of the city of Jerusalem. It's where they would do child sacrifice. the garbage dump in Jesus' day that was always burning and smoldering, where the garbage was placed and burned. It's the imagery behind this is what really we get the idea of the lake of fire and brimstone, or the lake of fire, or the second death. Those are all kind of synonyms for this idea of Gehenna. Over in Mark's gospel, in Mark chapter 9, 3 times Jesus uses the word Gehenna. And finally, he describes Gehenna. He says, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched, and everyone will be salted with fire. So Jesus talked a lot about this final place of Gehenna. So it's the place where all of the inhabitants of the abyss and Tartarus and Hades will ultimately be cast. So if you kind of just wanted one word to describe hell or the underworld, it'd be that word Gehenna, or the lake of fire. But the way I like to use this word, I think it's accurate. We could say there's 4 parts to the underworld. There's abyss hell, there's Tartarus hell, there's Hades hell, and then there's Gehenna hell. And it's the ultimate abode, or the final place of confinement for fallen angels and for lost people. Now, the most important thing that we want to remember about hell, the only good news about hell, is that God has provided a way for us to not go there. Well, that's the good news. God has provided a way of escape for us through Jesus Christ. We never have to fear the lake of fire if we trust in Jesus Christ and receive him to be our Savior. And one of the things that understanding this doctrine of hell should do, certainly, is cause anyone who's watching, if you've never fled to Jesus Christ for refuge, flee to him and receive that pardon that he purchased for you.